6,000 rural deportees from the far northwest region of Ethiopia. They are mostly from the Adi-Abab district of Tigray, a district where 55 village communities were settled for as long as 3 generations. They cleared the land, cultivated it, and built 55 churches and lived peacefully as self-administering villages under the authority of Tigray. They were harassed for several years after Eritrea's independence in 1993 and were deported en masse when the conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia broke out in May 1998. Eritrea was an Italian colony for half a century, liberated by Allied forces at the start of the Second World War, and remained under British military administration for 10 years. It was federated with Ethiopia in 1952 by an act of the UN. In 1962, the Ethiopian emperor unilaterally abrogated the federal constitution and annexed Eritrea, depriving her of her parliament, flag, and autonomous status. Thereafter, Eritreans fought a liberation war for 30 years and won their independence in 1991, an event that was formalized by a referendum conducted in 1993. From that date on, Ethiopia began confiscating land, homes, and crops of ethnic Eritreans in Tigray and encroaching upon Eritrean border regions, a creeping invasion that led to the current border war. The Eritreans now being deported were citizens of Ethiopia for 1 generation and had lived in Ethiopia for as much as 3 generations. They are civilian victims of war whose rights have been ruthlessly violated. Adi-Abab is Ethiopia's Kosovo. The mass deportation of entire villages from this district is one of the most inhumane forms of ethnic cleansing witnessed in the African continent this century.
أنا قبل سجر سران شديشتني قري الصوم قل موالي حيال وان قرن يوم ثم حماشن ليبان يوم أتي مصاني يوم أتي سني هندنا أتي سني هند
صوم كابي كيدكم كابي
ها قرنا كابي نبون دادي أصبر زايد كلهم يدبال أنت بيكل براخيا عندنا دانا قري
أبي مالتي يا أدي
دانا قري أدقرتو وبراخ داندير
أبي وبني في الجزيرة
برا داندير ما أنت فرا سلت بنا بعراي تبنا أرجت بنا نرى
من
ويانا نحن نشكل نقطو نبل بزواج مبار حاد ولا سهل تمهرت كلها بحسا كله كلات كله ناي
My name is Berhe Tesfawu. It has been 26 years since I went across to Tigray. Eritreans from Liban were there much before me. The TPLF, Tigray People's Liberation Front, were giving us donkeys, oxen, money for the work we did for them. They did this when the 2 liberation fronts were together, and the Tigrayan front was receiving training from the Eritrean front. The 2 fronts collaborated in bringing down the military government of Ethiopia. As they were doing all that, there was peace in our villages in Abiado. After liberation, the Tigrayan front came to power as the new rulers of Ethiopia and began to harass the Eritreans in Tigray. That went on for years. The year before last, at Badme, they destroyed our homes and farms. Later, they began rounding up former EPLF fighters living in Tigray. Those who were not jailed fled to Deda, near Badme, in Eritrea. The rest of the people wintered in peace. Then they turned upon us, rounded up all the people in our village, Haret, and detained us in Adi Wa'ala. We could not cultivate our fields, herd our animals, or retrieve our money. They set our crops on fire. They did that in Biara, Ayayit, Heret, Naflabagoni. Early one morning, before we had breakfast, they came to our homes and drove us out of the country like a herd of cattle. They prevented us from taking anything from our houses.
كولر كولر حسان تراي ولا دمبر سب تراي أي خياني أي من بتركوا سمعنا بقراي نقص محمد سمعنا بتيجان رينا هاي الثلاثة رينا من قصة هاي ماريا والكبر أي تنكين زين جين شو عتب أنت تساقل المسجنا الكبر كبر الكبر أي تراي.
We had never witnessed anything like this. A child is born naked, but you don't expel people from their land stripped of all their property. This had never happened in our history. Not at the time of Quran Muhammad, the Turks, the Italians, Haile Selassie, or even